Hello, thanks for joining me for this presentation. This presentation is about usability testing. In this presentation, we will see what usability testing involves and what to look for when testing a user interface and what special usability features need to be tested for the disabled. What is a user interface? User interface is a means to interact with the software program. Although there are very different user interfaces, they all meant for a single purpose. They give an input to a software program and receive output from it. What makes a good UI? A good UI or user interface should have a standard set of characteristics. We'll see what those characteristics are in the coming slides. And how do companies try to design a good UI with all those characteristics? So they normally use ergonomic specialists. They are usability specialists, and they run labs in the companies. And in the labs, what they do is like they set up a room, separate room where users will be allowed to play with their product, and then they will be observing how the users are testing using a video camera. Later, they will replay those videos to analyze what mistakes users are making and how they are using the mouse and how they are using the keyboard and which feature confuses them. Based on that observations, they will improve the UI. So we'll see what are those standards to make a good UI. The first one is follow standards and guidelines. Each UI should follow the standards and guidelines specified by the operating system if it's going to run in that operating system. For example, if you are designing a program that runs in the Windows, Microsoft have defined a set of standards that have to be followed to get certified as Windows certified program. And one of the examples for the standards are they have like 3 types of messages, like warning, error, and info messages. And in the standards document, they will specify like what type of messages should be used for what and when. And a good UI will be intuitive. I mean, it will be user interface should be clean, and it should not be unobstructive, and it should not be too much busy distracting the users. It should be well organized and laid out well. There should not be excessive functionality in the UI. And if everything fails, does they have a help system that really helps? Another characteristics is the consistent. So the UI should be consistent throughout. The example for inconsistency, we can say Notepad and WordPad. In the old Windows, the find or search functionality in the Notepad and the WordPad are accessed in a different ways. In Notepad, they are accessed through a search menu. In WordPad, they are accessed through the edit. But they have corrected now in the recent Windows application, both are consistent. And second, the shortcut keys and menu selections. Whenever we use a shortcut key, it should be used for the same functionality throughout the application. If you want to take an example, let's take the voicemail. In all the voicemail systems, the 0 option is always to get connected to a real person. Terminology and naming. Again, the terms should be used consistently throughout the application. Is find always called a find and not a search in some places? Though they are same, it will confuse the users. Audience. Does it talk to the same audience level? So example like financial applications, or let's take the greeting card application. When it gives any message, it should not be like technically non-understandable message. Placement of buttons. So OK and cancel buttons. If you take Windows, always the OK button will be to the left, whereas in Mac it's to the right. It's the standard, and all the applications developed for it should follow that standard. Similarly, whenever we design an application, it should be consistent throughout. And application should be flexible. With flexibility comes the huge testing effort and complexity. If you take an example, the calculator, they have two different views, standard and scientific, and the user can pick whatever view they want based on the task they have. State jumping. There might be additional ways to accomplish the same task, like the shortcut. So we should make sure by jumping states, we are setting the state variables correctly at the destination state. State termination and skipping. In the case of voicemail, like when we click 0, we are skipping a lot of states, and we just have to make sure the system is properly initialized by reaching that end state. Data input and output. There are multiple ways a data can be input and outputted from an application. Example, WordPad, you can type in a WordPad, or you can paste it from a clipboard, or you can load and document. So these are like different ways, like output, or you can print it, you can see it in the monitor. There are different ways for the different types of output too. So it should be flexible application, so user can use whatever format they are comfortable with. Another feature for a good UI, it should be comfortable. It should be appropriateness. Is the application appropriate to what it said it's doing? Like example, financial application should probably not go crazy with loud colors and sound effects. And the error handling. Nowadays people assume that undo feature is part of any application. So whenever they make any mistakes, whenever they perform a critical operation, the application should give a warning message before they do it, and they should have a undo redo feature in case if they make it. Performance, not necessarily application has to be fast. If the application is slow, it should properly tell the users how long it's going to take and how much have been processed. If the application is too fast, it will be too tough for the users to follow, like flickering multiple error messages on the screen. And is the application correct? Like the first one is marketing differences. We are not comparing here to a product specification, whereas we are comparing it to the sales information. And whatever they are marketing, is the application telling the same? I mean, is it correct comparing to the sales? Language and spelling. There are a lot of poor spellers, and make sure the language and the spellings are correct. Bad media. Media is like any kind of icons, images we use in the application. Is it correct? And what you see is what you get. So whenever we save any data in the application, so whatever we see, is it saved in the database? So that makes it correct and useful. Here we are not checking if the whole application itself is useful. We are checking for one particular feature. When you're testing, if you come across a feature and you evaluate it and see if it's really useful for the user. For example, you can say, like in the application, if there is a sausage bouncing across the screen, that's completely unnecessary for the user. So we identify such kind of features and remove it. Thanks for joining me today for this presentation.